I know that there are, yes, the meeting is being recorded. Welcome to those of you who are here. I think I'll maybe make some preliminary remarks as we wait for more people to join us. I know there were several more who are planning to come. So my name is Sue Jones. I'm a volunteer with the East Side Progressives. And tonight is the first of 3 scheduled summer forums sponsored by the East Side Progressives. As you have heard, this program is being recorded so that we can share it with others who are not able to be here tonight. At the moment, our series is planned to be all virtual, but please stay tuned, monitor the Facebook page. I hope that you have liked that page and follow the work of the East Side Progressives there and also on our website. Again, I'm Sue Jones and we'll be hosting this program this evening. I want to thank my fellow East Side Progressive volunteers for doing many, many things for this program, for handling the registrations, the Zoom, monitoring the chat, all the kinds of things that make anything possible. These people are getting it done. So thank you so much. All right, I think we'll get started and others will join us as they can. And already I'm not able to advance my screen. Okay, great. Let's try that. All right, technical difficulties here. Oh, there we go. So we are the East Side Progressives. You can see from the map here that our service area is in the lower right of this map. We welcome participation from across our city and across our region, of course, but we do focus on this service area. We're a group of volunteers that are dedicated to building a strong progressive movement on Madison's east side. And a huge part of that is serving our community through events like this. Please join us. We welcome your ideas and your involvement. Before we go on, Michael, I just wanted to check the volume level. Can you hear okay? Does that things looking good on from what participants can see so far?
Sounds fine on my end.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I'm a volunteer with East Side Progressives, as I mentioned. I worked in water quality for many, many years. And in April, I was one of 250 people who took 2 classes sponsored by the organizations that you see on the right. The first Master Recycler program in Wisconsin. It's a similar concept to Master Gardeners, Master Naturalists, and focusing on recycling. There's another set of classes to become a Master Recycler in July. If you're interested in that, you can register at Sustained Dane's website. Our focus this evening is on reducing the trash now going into our recycling bins, reducing the amount of material in the landfill that could have been recycled, and to help build a more sustainable community. Our plan is for a 1-hour program, but I will stay as long as there's questions at the end. And please post questions in the chat as we go, and I'll stop periodically and ask Michael if he'll read questions out, or if a number of questions have accumulated, Michael, and you just want to interrupt me, that's great as well. You may know many things about recycling already. I know we have some very, very experienced recyclers already on this program, but I'm not going to assume any sort of base level of knowledge here. Not everyone's at the same level. And my hope is that regardless of your level of experience with recycling, that you'll learn some things this evening that will help you improve your own recycling practice. First, just a little bit of East Side pride here in this program. The city of Madison began curbside pickup and recycling newspapers in September of 1968. It was a pilot program in some East Side neighborhoods. This was the first curbside recycling in the United States, and it was 2 years before the first Earth Day. The pilot program began after the U.S. Forest Products Lab here in Madison and the American Paper Institute approached the city in an effort to turn unwanted newspapers into a resource to make new paper rather than cutting down more trees. Much more environmentally friendly, much more energy friendly, and therefore much less costly. The program was a success, that pilot on the East Side, and 2 years later, what started as an East Side pilot grew into a citywide program in April 1970, and eventually it became mandatory in 1986. Madison and other Dane County communities were required to begin recycling of glass, plastic, and metals by January 1991 under a Dane County ordinance to limit the amount of trash being dumped in a rapidly filling landfill. The East Side again led the way. Starting in November 1987, the Tenny Lapham Neighborhood Volunteer Program was underway. In 1989, hundreds of East Side neighbors in the Shank Atwood neighborhood, they began in March of that year, and then the Wilmar neighborhood in May of that year volunteered to collect recyclables twice a month. And here's my personal connection to that era. That's me on the right in January 1990 at the opening of a neighborhood recycling center space that was donated by MG&E to assist the 3 East Side neighborhoods' efforts. Now, FYI, I refuse to speculate on why my safety goggles are below my chin in this photo, as some eagle-eyed people may have noticed. So I just want to say kudos to the East Side neighbors then and now who are working together to make life better. And here's to the ripple effect of positive change. I think that the East Side progressives strive to continue that East Side pride and that East Side accomplishment. When I say recycling, I'm talking about taking a material and breaking it down to turn it into something that it once was, or something similar. A great example is breaking down an aluminum can, and making it into another can. It doesn't reduce the quality of metal, so you could make a can over and over and over. Recycling, though, is not the least environmentally, doesn't have the least environmental impact of what we can do, I should say. Recycling is actually at the end of our thought process, and this is shown here by the 7 R's triangle. First of all, rethinking. Can I avoid waste in the first place? What's the most sustainable option for a purchase I'm considering? Refuse. Do I really need this thing? If the product is not recyclable in my community or not made with recycled content, can I use a different product? If a restaurant's takeout containers are not recyclable, I can ask them to look into changing these containers. And if they don't, over time, maybe I'll prefer a different place. As the pandemic eases, I will be feeling more comfortable to eat inside a restaurant and avoid the takeout containers entirely. I just got to say, the pandemic has been a challenge in so many ways for us, and the whole takeout Amazon delivery has certainly been a part of that. Reducing the amount or frequency of containers that I send to the landfill or recycling facility. I can buy in bulk, in larger quantities, use my own containers when possible. Reuse. Can I use someone else's stuff, or can they use mine? Check out community reuse markets on Nextdoor, FreeCycle, Buy Nothing Madison, Zero Waste Madison. There are a lot of resources online. Repair. Fix it, don't trash it. YouTube is your friend here. Rot. I'm talking here about food waste. To compost either at home or drop-off sites, or checking out the Madison Food Scraps program, where you can drop off food waste at the City of Madison drop-off sites. And then after all of those steps, only then do we get to recycling. There's still some environmental impact here. The plastic is made from fossil fuels, for example. Many types of plastic, like bottles, can only be recycled a few times before they reach the end of their useful life. And yet the plastic remains in the environment for hundreds of years. So best, whenever possible, to start at the top of the triangle. But when we get to the bottom, when we get to recycling, we want to make it as impactful as possible. And so that's the focus tonight. Why do we do it? I know that you're probably all familiar with the benefits to saving energy, therefore saving costs, protecting the environment, reducing the waste that goes to landfills, reducing the pollution that comes from mining raw materials, saving trees and water. One of my favorite statistics is that 1 ton of recycled paper saves 17 trees and is 50% less consumptive of water. The economic benefit of material reuse, the possibility for recycling collectors and workers to make money, and equity. It's often the case in the US that landfills and incinerators are sited near people of color. Recycling doesn't solve that problem, but keeping materials out of the landfill does reduce the impact there. So here's one of the motivating facts in improving our recycling practice, that 19% of what goes into Madison recycling bins is actually trash. And on the other hand, 13% of material in the county landfill could have been recycled. And so this is something that we need to pay attention to. And I think the master recycling program and our individual efforts can really help with this. There are no national standards for recycling. So if you think about Googling what is recyclable, you're not going to get a solid answer because it varies community to community. So that's why the local guides are so important. And global markets are important too, that affect our local program. Changing markets in the last 5 years have meant that the city no longer gets as much money from selling the materials collected. Almost 37% of what's in our carts right now doesn't generate revenue. We can help by ensuring that what's in our recycling carts can actually be recycled, making a cleaner product more efficiently for those who purchase those materials. What changed between 2017 and 2020? Well, 70% of the plastics that were once sent to China can no longer be sent there because China and 187 other countries changed their import rules. So now there's less revenue given the greater plastic supply. But markets are changing frequently. I've heard from the city recently that the plastic bottle market is projected to go up over the next 4 years. Many other materials are still very valuable in our recycling carts. So don't give up, but keep up with your recycling resources because things do change based on the market. Wish cycling. So throwing something in recycling that actually belongs in the garbage. I know we've all been there. I've certainly been there. So the pizza box is one of those items that the food contamination in this case actually makes it not recyclable. We want to make the recycling system as effective as possible, and it can be dangerous for our workers at the processing facilities if we put some materials in the cart that don't belong there. More about that later. In fact, very soon, because I wanted to talk about the materials recovery facility. This, sometimes referred to as a MRF, is where collected materials go to be prepared and sold and remade into other products. Madison and many other area communities use pelletier waste systems for residential recycling. And I have a video now of the Kip Street MRF on the southeast side of Madison. And the video, it's about 8 minutes long, and it's very, very helpful in helping us understand what can and can't be recycled, given how the materials are processed once they reached that system. So here's where I'm hoping the technology change will work for me as well. So for some reason, my cursor is not working. And let me stop sharing for a moment and find the video. Oops. All right. Can you see that introductory view of the facility? All right, here's the
Have you ever
audio.
wondered what happens to your recyclables after they're collected from your home or business?
Good
Please
to go,
enjoy
Michael?
watching how Pelletary Waste Systems separates and prepares your recyclables so they can be shipped to end users to be made into new products. As recycling trucks arrive at Kip Street Station, they back into the facility and unload recyclable material onto the tipping floor. The loader then piles up the recycling. When the system needs more material to sort, the loader will grab from the pile and load it into the first piece of equipment, the metering bin. The metering bin's function is to produce a constant flow of material, which is essential to allow the sorting equipment to function properly. After the material is metered, it goes up the first conveyor and drops onto the pre-sort station. At the pre-sort station, we have several quality control people who are pulling out recyclable metal objects like pots, pans, and toasters. They're also pulling out recyclable bags of shredded paper. While pulling out these good recyclables, they're also looking for material that is not supposed to be in the recycling. Ropes, water hoses, large non-bottle plastics, trash, diapers, loose plastic bags, and clothing are sometimes found in the recycling, but are not recyclable in this system. Contaminants will often cause good recyclables to become unrecyclable, and that material will go to the landfill. It's very important to only put approved materials into your recycling container so that good recyclables are not contaminated. As material leaves the pre-sort station, it goes up another conveyor and drops into the old corrugated cardboard, or OCC screen. As the cardboard moves across the screen, it will be touching multiple discs, allowing it to stay on top of the screen and move forward. Smaller recyclables will fall between these discs, drop down, and move on to the next piece of equipment. Under the OCC screen is a debris roll screen, which acts like a glass breaker and breaks bottled glass into quarter-sized pieces. The broken glass then falls through the debris roll screen and goes into a glass cleanup system that removes pieces of metal and other small non-glass items. After the glass and cardboard is removed, the recyclables move on to the newspaper screen. The newspaper screen uses the same concept as the OCC screen. The steep angle uses gravity to force three-dimensional objects like detergent bottles to bounce backwards and off the screen, while two-dimensional newspaper rides up and over. The third and final screen is the polishing screen. Small papers move up and over the screen onto the paper sorting platform. Gravity will cause three-dimensional materials to bounce backwards and off the back of the screen, where they're conveyed onto the next process. Just after the polishing screen, we have a quality control optical sorting machine. This equipment uses light and magnets to identify any metal or plastic material that is flattened enough to act like a piece of paper and remain in the paper stream. Once this material is identified, it is hit with a shot of air and removed from the paper stream so that it can go on to be sorted with all the other plastic and metals. At this point, we have a quality control station to look for any paper that has gotten through the screens. Generally, this would be three-dimensional paper products like phone books, balled up paper, or juice and milk cartons. These materials are pulled and sorted. Now that all papers have been sorted out of the recyclables, they go to the paper platform. There are several stations where people are removing contaminants, such as plastic films or trash from the paper. By the time the paper gets to the end of the conveyor, it will meet the paper mill's specifications. After all the paper products and glass have been removed and sorted, all that's left in the system is plastics and metals and other non-recyclable materials. A magnet removes all of the tin and steel cans. A second magnet system, called an eddy current, removes the aluminum cans. Since aluminum doesn't stick to a magnet like tin or steel, this piece of equipment spins a magnet extremely fast, and this produces a magnetic field that repels the aluminum cans, causing them to jump off the conveyor and onto their own storage area. After the metals have been removed, all that is left is number 1 through number 7 plastic bottles and trash that hasn't already been pulled out of the system. These bottles go onto our plastic sorting platform, where robotic arms use artificial intelligence to target and pull number 2 plastics like milk jugs, laundry detergent jugs, and shampoo bottles. The bottles that remain on the line go to the optical sorter. This machine shoots a ray of light into the plastic and reads how the light reflects back. A computer analyzes the light and determines if the plastic bottle is a number 1 plastic or a number 3 to 7 plastic bottle. The optic system will then shoot a perfectly controlled blast of air at the bottle, which directs it to either the number 1 plastic storage area or the number 3 to number 7 plastic storage area. Non-plastic material does not have air shot at it and falls onto the residue conveyor, which leads to the trash. Before this material goes in the trash, we have our final quality control station. The robotic arm uses the same artificial intelligence system and is responsible for pulling out any recyclable material that was not properly sorted. Once material is sorted, it's stored in bunkers. The sorted material gets pushed onto a conveyor that goes into the baler. The baler will compact the loose material into a large brick-like bale that uses metal strapping wire to hold it together. These bales are stored in a storage area and ready to be shipped to an end user. A majority of our paper and cardboard goes to paper mills in Wisconsin and Indiana, where it is made into new paper or cardboard products. Tin and steel cans go to local metal recycling companies and are eventually melted down to make new metal products. Aluminum cans are melted down to make new aluminum cans. Our plastics go to processors that shred the material into flakes, which are used to make new plastic bottles or other plastic products like plastic lumber, landscape edging, and drainage tiles. The glass gets color sorted and melted down to make new glass products. Thank you for watching how Pelletary Waste Systems sorts and prepares your recyclables to be shipped to manufacturers so they can be made into new products. Remember to please keep contaminants out of your recycling so they don't contaminate the good recyclables.
Can you see that slide now?
Not currently.
Okay. How about now?
Yep, I see it now.
Okay, thanks. So statewide, there are a number of facilities like that. And I just wanted to show that some common contaminants are things that can really mess up the system. Plastic bags, plastic films, cords, light strings, all of those are tanglers, and they can really shut down that process. Much more understandable once you've seen that at work. And grease, food contamination is a real problem for those facilities as well. So now I just want to go into a thought process that's helpful, as you're figuring out what goes in your cart or not. First of all, I know we're talking about recycling in the city of Madison, but if you happen to be from another community, please rely on your local guide at hand. Have it at hand. And then as you're hovering over your recycling cart, here's the thought process. What is the material? Is it something that can be recycled? The 4 basic materials are metal, glass, paper, and plastic. Second step, is the material accepted in your local recycling program? So referring to those local documents is key. Read the labels with caution. I mean, it might say it's recyclable on the material, but it is not recyclable in your local program. So that's something to pay attention to. Next, is it the right size and shape? This is important so that the machines we saw in the video can sort them correctly. So paper should be flat, for example. Everything else should be 3D. So a can shouldn't be crushed. This is something I've learned more recently because it does not work well in the system that relies on it being 3D. And size, the rule of thumb is that it should be larger than a sticky note, 3 inches by 3 inches. And then the last question, is it clean? Items with food or dirt are contaminated and not recyclable. So if you determine that the item is accepted, it's the right size and shape, and it's clean, then you can go ahead and place it loose in your cart. Please don't bag recyclables because, as we've seen, those plastic bags are contaminants and slow down the flow of the materials at the processing facility. And then here's some best practices, tips, and common contaminants for these major areas of items that can be recycled. And once I finish these 4 large big picture items, then we can take the first set of questions. First, cans. You don't need to remove the labels because they get burned away in recycling. If the metal item is smaller than a Post-it note, you can put it in another metal can, for example, and pinch it shut. Some less commonly known materials that are actually recyclable: clean aluminum foil. You need to ball it up at about baseball size and throw it in your cart. Empty and clean paint cans and empty aerosol cans, those can be recycled. Metal lids and bottle caps, if they're smaller than a Post-it note, they need to go into an empty metal can and then pinch it shut and put it in the cart. Wire hangers, it is recyclable in general, but not in your cart. As we've seen, it's a tangler. It can really muck up that system. So you can take that to your drop-off site. What I found is that dry cleaners in the neighborhoods are often happy to reuse these hangers. Glass, yes, bottles and jars are very common glass recyclables. Again, you don't have to remove the labels for those. But what you do have to do is remove the lids from glass containers. So metal lids can be recycled, but again, they need to go in a can if they're smaller than a sticky note, because they'll get lost in the system. But if you put them in another enclosed can, pinch it shut, then you're good to go. There are some common contaminants in this type of glass: windows, mirrors, some baking dishes, that kind of thing. They have chemicals added to them and make them difficult to process. So depending on where you live, they could be donated. Maybe they can go to a local drop-off site, but they do not belong in your recycling cart. This paper, many kinds of paper are recyclable. Computer paper, receipts, shredded paper. Shredded paper has to be in a transparent bag, no larger than a basketball. And basically all mail is recyclable. So greeting cards, newspaper, even mail with those little plastic windows, that can be put in the recycling cart. A common misconception is that glossy high ink paper that's found in magazines and junk mail is trash, but actually it's curbside recyclable. Most types of cardboard are recyclable, including the cores from paper towels, corrugated cardboard, cardboard packaging like cereal, cracker, and frozen food boxes. Paper items should be broken down flat, though, so that those machines can process them properly. Now, cartons, these are also paper, but they're handled a bit differently, so I wanted to call them out here. Cartons are a unique type of packaging for food and beverages that's mostly paper, but it does have a thin layer of plastic coating. The plastic might seem like a waxy coating, but it's not wax, and it's easily recyclable with the rest of this carton. The cartons can be shelf stable or refrigerated. They contain all kinds of things these days: juice, milk, soup, wine, egg substitutes. So these cartons are recycled into paper products and construction materials. So all you need to know here is emptying them out, of course. You don't need to rinse them out unless that you don't have the plastic top anymore. And then a quick rinse would be good. But if you have the plastic top, just put it back on. Don't crush it, don't flatten it, put it in the recycling cart. If the carton has a straw, just push the straw inside the container. So these are recommended for maximum recovery of these materials, but if you don't have a cap, for example, this carton is still recyclable. Paper, common contaminants, we've talked about pizza boxes. Oftentimes my pizza box bottom is contaminated with grease, but the top is clean. If there's no grease mark, you can pull off the top of that pizza box and throw it in the recycling. What else? Plastic liners from food boxes, like you see on the right, is trash, but the box itself is recyclable. People put weird things in recycling, like diapers. I don't know why they're not recyclable. Paper smaller than a sticky note is not going to make it through the system, and so it's not recyclable unless you put it with your shredded paper. Just put it in one of your transparent bags. Plastics, all plastic containers 1 through 7 are recyclable in our system. And by containers, this could be everything from a beverage bottle, a deli container, a milk jug. 1 to 7, but there's an exception for cups, and that's on the next slide. So unlike glass containers, you can leave the lids on plastic containers. Did I say, I hope I said unlike glass containers, you can leave the plastic lids on plastic containers. Beverage bottles, milk and juice jugs, laundry bottles, condiment bottles, these are all recyclable and you can leave the lids on. The plastic clamshell container like the one that you see here is recyclable. Also, many plastic cups are recyclable, but in Madison, only if they are numbers 1, 2, and 5. And but I've been referring to the numbers, and you see an example of that on this screen here. Excuse me, the chasing arrows with the number in between is what I'm talking about with the numbers. So common contaminants that are plastic film we've talked about, including bags and bubble wrap. They get stuck in the sorting machine. In Madison, cups are not recyclable if they are numbers 3, 4, 6, and 7. That got left off the slide, I see. So I think that's my overview. I have some examples that I want to walk through after this, but Michael, are there questions in the chat that I can address now?
See 2 questions so far. Barbara noted that Woodman's plastic bags say recyclable, and she was wondering if that's accurate.
I think I didn't mention that. So Barbara, I'm glad that you brought that up. Until recently, you could put plastic grocery bags, bundle them up in a bag and throw them in the recycling cart. That is no longer the case in Madison. And so you need to take them to grocery stores like Woodman's are an excellent example of a place that may still accept those plastic bags in their own recycling program. Those bags may have all different kinds of numbers on them. They might say that they're recyclable, but in general, those retail take-back programs are going to be things that feel like a plastic bag, not a crinkly, like a plastic grocery bag. I mean, not something crinkly or a thicker plastic, but that kind of plastic.
Thank you. And then Jerry had asked about ordinary flashlight batteries.
Batteries are coming up. There are a number of special cases coming up, and I will talk about those. In general, those are recyclable, but not in the cart, and I'll talk more about that later.
Sounds good. That's it for questions so far in the chat.
Great. Keep them coming in the chat. All right, so now we're just going to walk through a few examples of using that hover method. So the first is a to-go coffee cup. And there are many different materials on this. Oh, that is not what I wanted to have happen. There, stop there this time. Oh, all right. I'll just talk through it and we won't have the text that goes with it. So the top is not recyclable. This is a plastic top. It's too flat. It's not accepted. The paper sleeve is that you see there, the brown, is recyclable. Just pull that off, keep it flat, and throw it in the cart. The cup is not recyclable. These papers are often lined with number 4 plastic, and right now this is not accepted in our Madison carts. So the process again, first material, what is the material? Is it acceptable? And is it the right size and shape? And is it clean? Let's do another example. The one that wanted to jump through before is the peanut butter jar. So here's a glass peanut butter jar. And so glass is recyclable. You will need to clean it. An easy method is just to fill it with warm water shake it, let it sit, pour the water out, wipe the residue out as best you can before the water cools completely, and then place it in your cart with the lid removed. So the City of Madison folks often get asked, how clean is clean? And they've said, do your best, make an honest effort. But that hot water method does work pretty well here. No obvious chunks of peanut butter. Again, you can leave the label on for this type of container. A plastic peanut butter container, in that case, you could leave the lid on. All right, here's the next example. It's a squeeze pouch. All right, in this case, the answer is no, they are not recyclable, even if it seems like it might, because it's a plastic container. The size and shape won't work for a plastic item. They're too flat. The machinery will treat it as if it's paper. And the small plastic lid there, it's just too small and it's not accepted. Here's here's a picture with many things going wrong. Let's think through what that is. There are a few things. So yes, the cart is overfilled. You don't want to do this because water can get inside and ruin the recyclables. You know, imagine waterlogged cardboard or paper trying to go through those machines. That's not going to work. So make sure the lid is closed. And basketballs, of course, are not recyclable. And there's a plastic bag, and not only a plastic bag, it's got handles, definitely tangleables, not recyclable. The Christmas tree, another example of what? You think you can recycle a plastic Christmas tree? The answer is no. And just please don't bag the recyclables. Again, the workers will not have time to look to see what's inside that bag. Even if it is recyclable, it's going to go into trash. I have a few confessions. You know, I've been recycling for a long time. As you saw my 1990 picture, you know that, but I was doing some things wrong that I learned in master recycling class. I love peaches, the peach truck that comes every summer, those wonderful peaches, that really nice thick cardboard, but it's got a waxy lining. I asked around, could CSAs reuse these boxes, for example? And the answer is no. The peaches that I get are not organic. CSAs are dealing for the most part with organic vegetables. That is a cross-contamination that they cannot deal with. So this needs to go in the trash, unfortunately, but only after you've tried to find some ways around the house where you can use these really sturdy boxes that are quite wonderful. Pet food bags, bird food, that kind of thing. This type of plastic is not recyclable. I will admit to have been wish cycling this from time to time. And my tomato can there, I was just throwing the lids after I separated them, throwing them right into the recycling bin. And as I've talked about before, that doesn't work in the system. You need to put it inside that can and then pinch it shut when you're done. So I have a separate can where I can collect my lids. So, and smaller metal items like the cap below that would not go through the system, but I can throw it in my tomato can and toss it in my cart after that. The next couple slides are just 10 things that our master recycling program participants found really interesting. The fact that there's no national recycling system, that we need to rely on the local guidelines. The way the materials go through the sorting machines really dictate how what can be accepted in our system. The shape of the material matters. Cans should not be crushed. Cartons can be recycled. Keeping the lids on plastic items, but the lids off glass items. Plastic film no longer recyclable in the curbside carts. Again, this is a recent change, even though it's got the chasing arrow number that says it's recyclable, not in our system. Go to the retailers. The numbers inside those chasing arrows are called resin ID codes. Just the fact that there is a resin ID code on an item doesn't mean that that plastic is recyclable. And you may be, when you're not flattening things, you may think, I'm going to run out of space. You can ask the city for a bigger recycling cart. Here are a few special case items, and we're going to get to batteries, Jerry, very soon in this section. Electronics, they don't go in the cart, they don't go in the trash. These TVs, laptops, cell phones, other electronics contain valuable materials that can be recovered through responsible recycling. And these electronics also contain hazardous materials such as lead and mercury. And so they can harm human health and pollute the environment if they're not properly managed. So I guess my first recommendation would be, can someone else use this? Has it reached its useful life? Can someone else use your old phone or your old TV monitor? If it's at the end of the useful life, then wipe the data from laptops, from other types of electronics like that. And then eCycle Wisconsin is a DNR site that has a lot of great information about places where you can recycle electronic waste. A really handy thing is that the City of Madison drop-off sites does accept recyclables, electronic waste like this. Some of the items may require a fee. You can check the Recyclopedia for that information. Yeah. All right, batteries, here we are. So again, not in the cart, not in the trash. They are potentially dangerous, especially the lithium nickel and the batteries that are greater than 12 volts. So the lithium nickel and the 12 volt and larger batteries need to be taped to keep the terminals separate from each other. These batteries can also include those flat batteries that you find in many instruments, other things. Tape them in packing tape. They can be a fire hazard. So these can be dropped off at the drop-off sites as well. For us East Siders, that Sycamore site sees a lot of use. So hazardous waste, these are in the categories that you see here: paint and all kinds of chemicals. Again, not in the cart, not in the trash. If these are hazardous wastes, the Dane County Clean Sweep program at the landfill will accept these year round. That's Highway 12 to the southeast across from the Yahara Hills Golf Course. You can see in the lower right, I have some recent experience going to Clean Sweep. I've cleaned out a couple of homes in the last year or so, and a whole load from a household they will safely take care of for $10. And that car was stuffed to the gills, and I loved it that they did the right thing with it. Some other special cases: medications. They can go to med drops. Many police and fire departments, some of them may still be closed during COVID. You can find information on that on the web. I plan to send a follow-up email with a lot of tips and resources and a link to the video I shared, for example. So I will include a link to those drop-off sites. Medical sharps, many pharmacies take them, but be sure to talk with a pharmacist. The clerks may not always know if they take medical sharps or not at your pharmacy. CFLs, complex fluorescent light bulbs, the curly tubes, they have mercury in them. They can be taken to any retailer that sells them. There might be a charge for them, but some of the larger retailers do not charge. And as long as you're getting new bulbs, replace them with LEDs. They don't have mercury in them. Construction and demolition recycling. Some materials can be dropped off at the city or the county, or can be donated to Restore. For example, cabinets, doors, perfectly useful in many cases. There are resources on the city and county websites for these kinds of construction materials from your home projects. Textiles, a lot of clothing cannot be put in your cart. Almost 4% of what's in the landfill is textiles. So donating them to someone else who can use them, reduce your own consumption is helpful. There are great resources for secondary use. For example, community clothing swaps, those kinds of things are great ways to go there. So I just want to return to the pyramid as we get toward the end of the program here. We've talked about recycling being at the end of the process, really. improving the quality of the recycling stream in Madison has been today's focus, but this is really sort of the last step. There's much more that we've discussed as part of the master recycling training, including reducing the amount of waste that we generate, rethinking our consumption habits, refusing to make some purchases, living a more consumption conscious lifestyle. This might be worth another session on low waste living itself in the future. The big picture policy change things as well, which is why I want to invite Jerry Moore now to talk a little bit about the plastics issue and low waste living in general. Again, the big picture, advocating for policy changes, some bigger picture stuff. Jerry is a relatively recent East Sider, but has important experience and maybe a couple of stories to share from his work in New York City on the plastics problem. So Jerry, I'd invite your remarks. Michael, are you able to make sure he can be heard?
Okay, I'm unmuted. Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much, Sue, for the invite to be part of this very important East Side Progressives program. I recently moved here about a year ago from New York City. I was involved quite extensively in a program called Beyond Plastics, whereby an organization run by Professor Judith Enck from a college in Vermont was very active in working with and fighting with and complaining to the New York City Council in an attempt to reduce the amount of plastic that New York is putting into landfills. And that became particularly important, as you mentioned, Sue, when China stopped buying American waste materials and there was no place else to put them, particularly given the volumes in New York. So the end result of the efforts of Beyond Plastics in New York, and I can only speak to New York, is the fact that the city did finally enact a single-use plastic bag ban, which also included takeout food containers, drink straws, believe it or not. Billions of drink straws were finding their way into the landfills, and we were able to get all of those things legislated against, and considerable progress has been made. The city council and the politicians were not always cooperative in this venture. And I'm very pleased to see in your presentation, Sue, how Dane County and Madison have been to the forefront in recycling. And that was a very impressive video. One drawback, however, I see, if I may, and my compliments to you on the depth of the detail in your presentation, but it struck me that what we have been talking about and accept as being necessary is just too bewildering for the ordinary family and household in big cities. How are they supposed to remember the difference between, well, for example, look at me. I was drinking a minute ago these Kirkland Costco water bottles, purified water. It does have the arrow, the rotating arrows, but there is no plastic number inside of that. However, embossed in the plastic further down, compliments of Costco, is 100% recyclable. Now, maybe Costco believes that, but frankly, I do not. And how many other people like me won't know? Well, they'll see 100% recyclable and they'll put it into their recycling stuff. So the onus is on all of us, and I commend the efforts of East Side Progressive in launching this. But I am involved in more global environmental activism, if I may. And as a veteran of the aviation industry, I hold my hand up and admit that this industry of ours, or mine, contributes 4 or 5% of global carbon every year, and by burning fossil fuels. So the aviation industry, the steamship industry, the tanker industry, boating, diesel trucking, all of these things are contributing mightily to an alarming, catastrophic situation in which this planet finds itself. And as a result of that, I will do whatever I can in working with the various environmental groups in trying to minimize or mitigate the effects of this. But it's got to start at home. I agree, Sue, and I think it's admirable that the 20 or so people who are here tonight in this have taken the time to participate in this program. And I would urge all of them, to the extent you can afford the time and the energy, to extend your activities into the broader environmental issues, while at the same time embracing the recyclable. And one last point, absolutely agree with you with the inverted triangle, where we have got to try to reduce waste. And as I was saying to you the other day, so in Korea, where there was a huge food waste problem, which was gumming up the whole works in the country with trying to dispose of unwanted food. Because of the efforts of various local governments in South Korea, that whole thing has been turned around now, and 95% of food waste in South Korea is now recycled. So they've done it and they've managed it, and it is a huge benefit to the environment, to the fragile environment, I might say. That's the end of my speech for tonight. I didn't mean to go on and on and on like that, but I'm passionate about the planet. I think we all owe it to our children and future generations of our kids to try to offset the dreadful threat to the planet that exists today. There we go.
Jerry, thank you so much. I think your experiences in New York and your offering the global perspective to us is really helpful as we talk about a very, very local system. It is part of a much larger collection of systems that will involve continued education and advocacy. So thank you for those remarks, Jerry.
Thank you, Sue.
I will be, thanks to your recommendation, I'm going to register for Judith Enk's Beyond Plastics class. So there's a lot more that I have to learn as well. So at this point, Michael, are there any more questions or comments that have showed up in the chat?
Yep, a few more questions from the chat. Susan asked, what kind of bag do you use for shredded paper, and how transparent, or how is a transparent bag different from a plastic bag?
Yeah, it can be a plastic bag for sure. And grocery bags, some grocery bags are virtually transparent. You can see through. I've even used some white bags that are thin enough that you can see what's inside. So that's the basic test. Can a person working quickly on that line that you saw grab a bag and see through it enough to see that it's shredded paper? So clear is best. White is okay if it's pretty much transparent. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you. Diane asked, where can I recycle the black plastic used for plants?
So that is generally not recyclable. You probably won't find a number on that. It's really crinkly plastic. Black plastic is a problem. In general, it's lower quality plastic, but do check on those containers and see if they have a number on them, because if it is 1 to 7, then it would be recyclable. And the other thing that I would recommend, again, going to the higher up on the triangle, can someone else use them? Can you start some seeds in them next year? Next.
Thank you. That's it for questions in the chat.
Great. Well, we're happy if something occurs to you after this program and you just want to send an email or respond to the follow-up email that you'll get, something occurs to you afterwards, make a good effort to try to find in the Recyclopedia for the City of Madison, available online. Make a good effort to try to find that. If you can't find something, I'm happy to try to continue digging and help get the answer to that. Again, the Master Recycler Program is coming up again, July 13th and 20th. I think they still have some spots available in that program if you'd like to also become a Master Recycler. Jerry's comments, again, spoke to the changing situation and the complexity of this for many people. And the more of us in the community who maybe have gone a little bit more in depth and can share this information with our neighbors, the better. So consider that. And please join our upcoming forums. So the first Thursdays of the month in the summer from 7 to 8 p.m. are going to be other really interesting forums, I think. I'm looking forward to the one on July 1st with voting rights, and August 5th, the Madison Public Schools budget for this coming year and beyond. You can register at the Facebook page. Please promote them in your networks. And again, can respond to the email or interact with the Facebook page or the website. What are your ideas for future forum topics or speakers? I think this is something that Eastside Progressives really enjoys doing, are these kinds of programs. We also do a lot of candidate forums. You may know us for that during election seasons, but these kinds of informational forums are something that we feel a special enjoyment and kind of responsibility for in our community. So please let us know what you'd like to hear more about. And thank you so much for your attendance. Thanks for your questions and comments. And I see Jerry, maybe somebody else has some.
Yes, so Lance had posed a question asking where he could get a copy of the recycling guide. And I got one. I think it's called Recyclopedia, and it's produced by the City of Madison. When I moved into my new house here about a year ago, a very, very good package was waiting for me from the city, detailing all of my recyclable options and my trash options. So I think if you go to the City of Madison website, you can get a copy or with this material in it. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that would be easily findable online, City of Madison 2021 Recyclopedia. You will find it. However, back in the day, they used to send the Recyclopedia to each one of us. And these days, they do print a number of copies. And so you can request the Streets Division to send you one. I requested one that I can have a hard copy for these types of programs. But I also find the online resource very helpful because I can Control F and easily search through the document for something that I need. Any other questions or comments that have come up? I guess not. Well, watch for a follow-up email. We'll try to include a lot of resources in that, and it will also include a reminder of the upcoming forums that the Eastside Progressives are sponsoring, and maybe some other information about us and how to get connected with us. We'd love to have you join with us. Thank you very much.